The poor student my mum sponsors is impersonating me at school. At the bustling school gates, she beat me to it, smoothly sliding into the car. She called out to me in a voice loud enough for everyone around to hear. "Charlotte, I know we're close, but it's not fair to take advantage of our friendship like this. We don't live in the same direction, and you can't keep hitching rides with me. Expecting my family's driver to take you home just because we're friends." Her words drew disapproving looks from the onlookers towards me. In the past, I would have blushed furiously, not knowing how to respond. But as luck would have it, I had just been reborn. So, in front of everyone, I mercilessly yanked her out of the car, got in myself, and spat in her face. "A few days of the good life, and you've forgotten who you really are. Your family's driver? Go on then, call him. See if he dares to answer you." Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. The commotion in the crowd fell silent as my icy words cut through the air. With a look of cold disdain, I swept my gaze over Emma Andrews. Her school uniform disheveled after I had dragged her out of the car. I didn't utter another word. I slammed the car door shut with a loud bang and ordered the driver to start moving. Outside the car, Emma, having regained her composure, began pounding on the door. With her usual unwarranted air of superiority, she demanded that I open it. "Miss, this doesn't seem right." Thomas Luton, the driver, turned to look at me, his voice filled with hesitation. "Doesn't seem right?" I let out a cold laugh. If Emma wanted me to open the door, fine, I'd oblige her. In a split second, while she wasn't paying attention, I unlocked the door. As she finally managed to open it, I leaned back slightly and forcefully kicked the door with my foot, causing it to swing open violently. Emma, caught off guard, was struck by the door as it flew open with tremendous force. Her head collided with it, and she was knocked backwards. "Ah!" A cry of pain escaped her lips as she fell to the ground. I leaned against the car door frame, watching with satisfaction as she lay sprawled on the pavement. Her arms and legs bloodied, a lump already forming on her forehead. "Charlotte Martin!" Emma screamed at me, her voice hoarse with rage. Her eyes were red with anger, and even in this state, she couldn't resist twisting the truth. "It's not like I'm never going to give you a lift home again. But no matter how close we are, you can't expect to use my family's car every single day. This is my family's car, how could you do this to me? It's too much." "Too much?" I pointed at myself, amused, before letting out a derisive laugh. "You asked me to open the door, and I did, didn't I? It's not my fault you didn't move out of the way in time and got hit. I should be the one accusing you of insurance fraud. And since when did people start spouting nonsense without any proof? You say this is your family's car? Where's your evidence? Open your eyes and look properly. Do you even know what brand this car is? Just because you've worn some nice clothes and put on a human face doesn't mean you've actually become someone important." With that, I stopped wasting my breath on her and once again closed the car door, instructing the driver to leave. Noticing Thomas's sympathetic gaze towards Emma, who was crying pitifully outside the window, my face darkened instantly. "Thomas, don't forget who pays your wages," I said coldly. "When my father returns from abroad, I'll be sure to tell him everything that's happened these past few days. Think about your son. Rein in that overflowing sympathy of yours and don't waste it on those who don't deserve it." As soon as I finished speaking, the look of sympathy vanished from Thomas's face. He used to be my father's driver, but in recent years, as my father has been abroad dealing with matters at our overseas branches, he was assigned to me. As for Thomas's son, he works as my father's assistant, while his wife is the housekeeper who takes care of my grandmother at the Martin family's main residence. Their entire family is employed by us. I understood why Thomas felt sympathy for Emma. Ever since my mother brought her home 6 months ago, Emma has been trying to secure her place in our family by ingratiating herself with everyone. She would often help the housekeepers with cooking and cleaning, or chat with Thomas while helping him wash the cars. Over time, the staff developed a fondness for her and, out of pity, began to look after her privately. My words just now were a reminder to Thomas of who his real employers are and whom he's working for. Since my father assigned him to me, he should be devoted to serving me. not dividing his attention to care about people with ulterior motives and false pretenses. As I arrived home, Ms. Howard, our housekeeper, immediately came to greet me and take my school bag. When she noticed I had returned alone, without Emma, her smile faltered for a moment before she quickly asked, "Miss Charlotte, why have you come back by yourself? Where's Emma? Isn't she with you?" I didn't answer Ms. Howard's questions. Instead, I washed my hands and went straight to the dining room, ready to eat. The table was laden with almost all of Emma's favorite dishes. The smoked haddock I had specifically requested yesterday was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a roast beef, Emma's absolute favorite, took pride of place in the center of the table. In that moment, I was instantly furious. To make matters worse, Ms. Howard seemed completely oblivious to my darkening mood. Ignoring Thomas's attempts to stop her, she prattled on. "Madam might be home a bit late today. Would you like to wait for Miss Emma before starting dinner? Have you had another tiff with Emma? I don't understand why you're always at odds with such a sweet girl. Thomas, you'd better go back and pick up Emma. We don't want her getting lost again in an unfamiliar area like last time." Ms. Howard's endless chatter, though phrased as questions, was full of reproach. My fingers tapped rhythmically on the table, as I coldly watched Ms. Howard turn to urge Thomas to go and fetch Emma. "That's enough, stop talking." Thomas finally hissed at her, unable to bear it any longer. It was then that I finally spoke, my voice calm as I asked her, "Ms. Howard, where's the smoked haddock I asked you to prepare yesterday?" Ms. Howard froze, finally realizing something was amiss. She slowly turned to me and began to explain. "Well, I was a bit late to the market today, and they had sold out of haddock, so I couldn't make it. If you'd like, I could prepare it tomorrow." "Is there only one market in our entire town?" I interrupted her flimsy excuse coldly. "If you were late and the haddock was sold out, how come there was still beef available? Was it really sold out, or did you simply forget, or worse, choose not to make it?" With that, I picked up the plate of mouthwatering roast beef and dumped it, plate and all, into the bin. I rarely lose my temper, but it seems the people in this house have forgotten who the real mistress is. "Ms. Howard, if you're so keen to follow Emma's orders, perhaps she should be the one paying your wages from now on." I won't repeat myself. Clear all these dishes from the table. I want smoked haddock today. If I don't get it, you can pack your things and take an early retirement. With that, I turned and headed upstairs. As I turned, I overheard Miss Howard and Thomas muttering, "What's got into Miss Charlotte today? She never used to care about these things before." The moment I hung up the phone, I collapsed onto my bed, utterly exhausted. Staring at the ceiling above, I raised my hand to rub my throbbing head. Ms. Howard was right. In the past, I wouldn't have cared about these things. But at the bustling school gates, Emma beat me to it. As usual, she smoothly slipped into the car and called out to me in a voice loud enough for everyone around to hear. "Charlotte, I know we're close, but it's not fair to take advantage of our friendship like this. We don't live in the same direction, and you can't keep hitching rides with my family's driver just because we're friends." With those words, the people around us turned to me with looks of disdain. In the past, I would have blushed furiously, not knowing how to respond. But as luck would have it, at that very moment, I was reborn. In my previous life, she had impersonated me, deliberately humiliating me in public like this, kicking me out of the car and making me look like a shameless freeloader to all my classmates. Despised by everyone. I wanted to clarify my identity at the parents' evening to expose Emma's lies. But to my shock, my mother attended in place of Emma's parents and announced to everyone that she only had one daughter, Emma Andrews. I cried and asked my mother why she was treating me like this. Why she wouldn't acknowledge me as her own daughter. But she just waved her hand, clarifying to everyone. "Who's your mother? You're nothing but the daughter of my housekeeper. We only helped you out of pity, and now you're trying to claim things you have no right to. What a disgrace!" Her words were like a devastating thunderbolt, instantly plunging me into hell. Taking advantage of my mother's favoritism, Emma lost all restraint. She not only incited those who curried favor with her to bully me at school, tormenting me to the brink of depression. I called my father in tears, pouring out all my grievances. My father, who loved me dearly, rushed back from abroad, only to meet with a plane crash. My grandmother, my only support, fell down the stairs upon hearing the news of my father's death, hitting her head and passing away on the spot. I was still a minor. So naturally, everything at home was rightfully inherited by my mother. So, after inheriting my father's company and all his assets, my mother immediately adopted Emma Andrews. And to prevent me from being propped up by the old guys on the company's board of directors when I came of age, the two of them worked together to fabricate a lie that I had schizophrenia and sent me to a mental hospital. Under their instructions, I was tortured to death in the mental hospital. It was just before I died that I learned a huge secret. All the suffering I had experienced in my previous life flashed before my eyes. I don't want to make any useless vows to the heavens. After all, being able to live again is enough to strengthen my resolve. Those who have hurt me, I will make them pay one by one. And those who truly love and cherish me, I will protect them and never let them meet the fate of my previous life. I don't know how long it was before there was a knock on the door. Ms. Howard nervously called me down for dinner. In the dining room, my favorite smoked haddock was placed in the center of the table. All the other dishes on the table had been replaced, mostly with seafood that I usually enjoyed. Ms. Howard looked at me cautiously, calling me miss as if trying to please me. I didn't say a word, not even giving her a glance. Just sat down at the table and started eating with interest. The taste of the smoked haddock melted in my mouth, mixed with a hint of sea saltiness, savory and slightly sweet. I ate bite by bite. It was just a dish I could have any time before, but it took me a lifetime to taste it again. Just because Emma was allergic to seafood after she was brought into the Martin family. Not a trace of seafood ever appeared on the dining table again. But why? The master of this house isn't named Andrews. The dish I couldn't eat in my previous life, I've tasted it in this life. So, from today on, all the regrets I couldn't fulfill in my previous life, I will achieve one by one. When my mom returned with Emma, who had just been bandaged up at the hospital, they found me sitting at the table, heartily tucking into a feast of seafood. The smell of seafood made Emma turn deathly pale, and she immediately started to retch. However, when my mom looked at her, she deliberately covered her mouth and apologized, saying she couldn't help it. My mom, who was already angry about me hurting Emma, became furious at the sight. She strode forward, not caring that I was in the middle of eating, and swept all the seafood off the table onto the floor. Eat, eat, eat. You've got some nerve, haven't you? She shouted. How dare you eat when you've hurt Emma like this? And seafood of all things. You selfish beast, don't you know Emma's allergic to seafood? What's her seafood allergy got to do with me? I raised my head and met my mom's eyes. In my previous life, she always told others that I had a nasty temperament and acted like a spoiled princess. Unlike the sweet and sensible Emma. To please her, I had always been modest, never fighting or competing. Yet she still accused me of being manipulative and scheming. Since nothing I did could satisfy her, I might as well show her what a real spoiled princess with a nasty temper looked like. Taking aim, I threw the half-eaten crab from my mouth straight at Emma behind her. My aim was good, it hit her right in the face, causing her to let out a shrill scream. I let out a cold laugh and looked at her with utter disdain. She's just a poor scholarship student who comes here to beg for food. Why should I have to accommodate her? Who does she think she is? I'm doing her a favor by giving her my leftovers. Always complaining about this and that, acting like she's somebody in this house. She should take a good look in the mirror and see if she's worthy of it. I leaned back in my chair, speaking carelessly. Though I was only stating facts, Emma acted as if she had suffered some great injustice, her eyes turning red as she burst into tears. But I could still see the malice hidden beneath her facade of hurt, barely contained. How could I have given birth to such an ill-mannered creature? Apologize right now. My mom's voice was so shrill it nearly pierced my eardrums, but I remained silent. My sharp eyes darted between her and Emma behind her, as if to say, am I wrong? It's all right, Miss Andrews. Emma, who had seemed utterly humiliated, stepped forward and tugged at my mom's clothes. With red eyes, she said, the young miss is right. Even though you've been supporting me, I'll never be born lucky like her. I'm just an outsider in this house, only fit to eat leftovers." With that, Emma picked up the half-eaten crab from the floor. Her eyes seemed to hold a great determination, as she ignored my mom's attempts to stop her and stuffed the crab into her mouth. Ugh, I watched in disgust, my brows furrowing tightly. I had to admit, Emma was ruthless. To secure her place in this house and gain sympathy by driving a wedge between my mom and me, she would stop at nothing. But she had made one mistake: there was no need to drive a wedge between my mom and me. As far back as I could remember, my mom had never shown me a kind face. I used to wonder how a mother could not love her own child. It wasn't until I learned the truth just before I died that I finally understood the real reason. Phoebe Andrews, this woman I had called mother for 17 years, was not my birth mother. "Emma!" My mom cried out in shock, quickly fishing the crab out of Emma's mouth. Seeing Emma in tears, she immediately pulled her into a comforting embrace. Only after Emma had calmed down did she finally remember me, the culprit. "You vicious little brat. Do you think I won't teach you a lesson?" she snarled. "Look what you've done to Emma. I ought to beat some sense into you, you beast. I dare you to try." Just as my mom was about to slap me across the face, her hand raised high, an angry shout rang out from the entrance. My mom, who had been burning with rage just moments ago, suddenly trembled. Her hand, poised to strike, froze in midair as if someone had hit the pause button. As the sound of a walking stick hitting the floor grew closer, the expression on her face gradually turned to one of terror. "Grandma!" I suddenly became excited when I saw her, rushing past Phoebe to run towards her. "Grandma, I've missed you so much." Like a child, I threw myself into my grandmother's arms, thinking of my previous life, where my beloved grandmother's death was indirectly caused by me. My heart ached as if it were bleeding. Tears involuntarily rolled down my cheeks. "Oh my precious Charlotte, why are you crying? Let Grandma have a look at my darling. Have you lost weight? Don't cry, sweetheart. Grandma's here now. I'll stand up for you. Let's see who's been upsetting my little Charlotte." Seeing my tears, my grandmother's eyes were filled with concern. She gently patted my back, just as she used to do when I was little. Only after I stopped crying did she lovingly touch my face, then pulled me behind her and turned to face Phoebe, her expression instantly changing. "You seem to have gotten quite bold while my son isn't home." If Charlotte hadn't called saying she missed me, prompting me to pop over for a visit, I wouldn't have known that you've taken charge of this house. Grandma led me to sit down in the nearby living room. Phoebe was visibly seething with anger, yet too afraid to even lift her head in front of my grandmother. Seeing her silence, Grandma let out a cold snort, slamming her walking stick hard against the marble floor. Phoebe visibly trembled. "Mother, this was really Charlotte's fault. I was just giving her a small lesson." "A lesson? What right do you have to teach her anything?" Grandma's eyes flashed as she shouted. She had always looked down on my mother's background, and disapproved of how she continued to flaunt herself in public despite being married, disregarding the Martin family's reputation in high society circles. If it wasn't news of her attending a dinner party with some bigwig today, it was paparazzi catching her dining with some young celebrity tomorrow. In the upper echelons of society, countless people mocked my grandmother and father behind their backs. In my previous life, I knew Grandma had issues with Phoebe, so I had always tried to mediate between them. I don't know how many good things I made up about her to Grandma, but in the end, it was all for nothing. I don't care what you do outside, but don't forget how you got your current position and status. If you dare to let my granddaughter suffer even the slightest bit, you'll have no reason to stay in this family any longer. And you!" Grandma's gaze shifted to Emma, who stood beside Phoebe. Her sharp look almost made Emma fall to her knees. Terrified, she stammered, Grandma, I." "Don't call me Grandma. Charlotte is my only granddaughter." Grandma's tone of disgust was evident as she coldly said, "I hear you've been pretending to be the Martin family's young lady at school, haven't you?" No, I haven't. Whether you have or not, you know it in your heart." Grandma pressed on, giving Emma no chance to explain herself. Another cold snort, and beads of sweat were already rolling down Emma's face. After my grandfather passed away when my father was in his teens, the vast Martin family business fell into my grandmother's hands. Before my father was capable of taking over Martin Group, Grandma had been managing it. Back then, Martin Group hadn't achieved the glorious success it has today. My grandmother single-handedly led Martin Group through its most difficult times, transforming it into a thriving enterprise under immense pressure. Her methods and vision were unparalleled. Even now, in her advanced years, just one look from her, honed by decades of ruthless decision-making in the business world, is enough to make anyone tremble. Let me make this clear today. The Martin family has only one young lady, and Charlotte will be the only heir in the future. Some people might be plotting some underhanded schemes, but they'd better measure their own capabilities and see if they're qualified to go against an old woman like me. If I find out again that someone's been playing dirty tricks and causing my Charlotte any trouble, don't blame me for being unkind to them. With that, she stood up, pulling me along, and instructed Ms. Howard behind her. Pack some things. I'll be staying here for a while. I want to see who dares to cause trouble right under my nose. Grandma moved in with us. By the next day, she had assertively replaced all the household staff except for Thomas. Phoebe and Emma were practically green with envy. After all, my father was rarely home, and they had worked hard to ensure all the staff were loyal to them. They never expected Grandma to appear and undo all their efforts in one fell swoop. My mother was seething with anger but didn't dare to show it. Now, she was under Grandma's constant scrutiny, her every move and word closely watched. Emma had it even worse. She had always relied on my mother's favoritism to throw her weight around at home and school. But now, my mother could barely take care of herself, often using work as an excuse to stay away from home. Emma's position was already awkward, and she had only just managed to ingratiate herself with the previous staff. Now, with all the familiar faces gone, and the new staff specifically instructed to only take orders from me, she found herself in a precarious situation. Even Thomas, who used to take extra care of her, now avoided too much contact with her after I had a word with him, fearing to upset me. Emma had become practically invisible in this house. She didn't want for food or drink, but the princess-like treatment she once enjoyed was gone for good. But wasn't this how it should have been all along? She was nothing more than a charity case supported by the Martin family. Why did she think she was entitled to be treated like royalty? As greedy as she was, Emma had tried to change her situation by attempting to charm Grandma. But her petty tricks didn't impress Grandma one bit. After having her allowance cut in half, Emma finally learned to behave and stopped causing trouble. At last, we had some peace and quiet. This was probably the most comfortable period I'd experienced in both my lives. Without all these annoying people and issues, I could focus entirely on revising for the upcoming monthly exam. Unlike in my previous life, where I was constantly distracted by worries, and dropped from first in the year to out of the top 10 in the first monthly exam after school started. This time, as expected, I maintained my position at the top of the year. After the first monthly exam following the start of school, it was time for the parents' evening. Unlike in my previous life, I no longer harbored any hope that Phoebe would attend my parents' evening. After all, I understood how much she despised acknowledging me as her daughter. On the day of the parents' evening, I was assigned by the form tutor to collect signatures at the door and guide parents into the classroom. From a distance, I could hear a commotion growing louder as it approached the classroom door. I overheard someone say, "No way." I just saw Phoebe Andrews with Emma at the school gate. So, is Emma really the daughter of the actress Phoebe Andrews? The heiress of Martin Group? Definitely. I saw Phoebe with her arm around Emma's shoulders. They looked so close, it must be mother and daughter. The chatter, mixed with surprised voices, reached my ears. The familiar sound of high heels echoed from one end of the corridor to the other, getting closer and finally stopping in front of me. A quick glance revealed Phoebe and Emma standing before me, one with a look of disdain, the other with a smug expression. Emma deliberately glanced into the classroom, noticing that the seat in the front row where I usually sat was still empty. A fleeting look of schadenfreude crossed her face, as she addressed me in a voice only the three of us could hear. "I'm sorry, Charlotte. Ms. Phoebe felt sorry for me not having parents here. So she's come to the parents' evening in place of my parents. You don't mind, do you, Charlotte? Oh no, not at all. I don't mind at all. I pushed the sign-in sheet in front of them. Would you mind signing quickly, please? There are other parents waiting behind you. My face showed no sign of embarrassment or distress. After all, Phoebe Andrews wasn't my real mom. And it was her business if she wanted to attend someone else's parents' evening. What did it have to do with me? Seeing that I wasn't bothered at all and that they hadn't managed to upset me. The smug looks on their faces quickly faded. Phoebe gritted her teeth and signed quickly, then said to me with venom, "Keep putting on a brave face." I just thought, some people love to flatter themselves. Phoebe Andrews' appearance immediately drew the attention of all the parents and students in the class. After all, as an award-winning actress, she naturally had a certain level of fame. Amidst the surrounding voices of admiration and flattery, Emma's spine straightened noticeably. She kept throwing challenging glances at me, but I pretended not to notice and walked straight to my seat. As the parents' evening was about to begin and some parents arrived late, the form tutor entered the classroom. Upon seeing Phoebe next to Emma, the tutor's expression was clearly shocked. She politely asked, "Emma, may I ask who this is?" "Hello, teacher. I'm Emma's mother," Phoebe announced to the whole class, just as she had in my previous life. She looked at Emma beside her, her eyes full of motherly love and doting. After introducing herself, she continued sincerely in front of the entire class. "I'm often away on film sets, and her father is busy with business. So we rarely have time to accompany and care for her. I'd like to ask all of you, her classmates, to befriend my little Emma more often at school. That way, you can look out for each other, and her father and I can have some peace of mind." Her demeanor was humble, her tone gentle and sincere, very much like a mother concerned for her child, moving those who saw it. "Of course, Ms. Andrews. We already love hanging out with Emma. Emma is truly your daughter, Ms. Andrews. She's just as kind as you. Don't worry, Ms. Andrews. We'll take good care of Emma. We won't let anyone bully her." As everyone chimed in, they deliberately cast glances in my direction. It was as if they were just short of saying outright that anyone meant me. After inquiring about Phoebe's identity, the form teacher scanned the class and finally rested her gaze on me. Noticing the empty seat beside me, she frowned slightly and asked in a low voice, "Charlotte, where are your parents? Didn't they come today?" The teacher's voice wasn't loud, but it was still audible to those who were paying attention. I was about to answer when I heard Phoebe's voice from behind me. "Charlotte, didn't you tell your parents about the parents' evening today? You silly girl, even if you're usually independent. You shouldn't keep such important things from your family. Look, your dad is probably still waiting at the school gate. I'll call him up right now." As she said this, she took out her phone to dial, explaining to the confused classmates and parents around her, "I'm sorry everyone, this child's father is my family's chauffeur. And her mother is our housekeeper. I've watched this child grow up since she was little. She's always been proud. And she even asked me to attend the parents' evening in place of her parents, but I refused. I thought, how could I possibly replace someone's parents for such an important event? Don't you agree, teacher?" Phoebe's words were spoken casually, but each sentence implied that I looked down on my parents' jobs and that I was an ungrateful brat. Sure enough, as soon as she finished speaking, almost everyone turned to look at me with strange expressions. Some parents couldn't help but mock out loud, not even acknowledging her own parents. What an ungrateful child. It's better to raise a dog than a daughter like that. If I were her parents, I'd cut ties with her completely. It was almost exactly the same scene as in my previous life. In my previous life, because of Phoebe's words, I was publicly criticized and felt utterly humiliated, my face burning red with shame. I had rushed up to her, demanding to know why she said such things. Why she treated me like this when I was her real daughter. But she had pushed me away without mercy, saying I had gone mad after my lie was exposed, that I had mental problems. If only I had known then that this woman wasn't my birth mother, I certainly wouldn't have acted so impulsively as I did in my previous life. Have you finished? I calmly raised my head amidst the sneers and contemptuous looks. My eyes fixed unblinkingly on her. There was no trace of the panic from my previous life in that gaze. Only cold indifference and full of mockery. Ms. Andrews, as a public figure, you should know that your every word and action has a significant impact on both yourself and others, right? Can you take responsibility for everything you've just said? Of course. Phoebe lifted her chin, clearly not taking these words seriously. Unfortunately, she was destined to be humiliated. Everything I said is the truth. I used to pity you, so I turned a blind eye to you pretending to be my daughter in public. But now, I don't want to indulge your vanity anymore. And I want to prove my Emma's identity. She is the only daughter of me, Phoebe Andrews. Oh. I didn't know you had another daughter out there? As Phoebe finished speaking, a deep voice resonated from the doorway into the classroom. The moment she heard that voice, the smug expression on Phoebe's face instantly froze. She turned towards the classroom door in disbelief, and upon seeing the newcomer, her face turned pale, her legs nearly giving way beneath her. Husband, she stammered. What are you doing here? At the doorway stood my dad, George Martin, and Grandma, their faces dark with displeasure. It was unclear how much of Phoebe's words they had overheard. George was impeccably dressed in a suit, his presence commanding as he entered the classroom. The atmosphere seemed to shift, growing tenser with each step he took. A parent in the room, who happened to work at Martin Group, instinctively stood up upon seeing my dad. They respectfully addressed him as Mr. Martin. My dad nodded in acknowledgement before taking a seat next to Grandma at my desk. And you are? The form tutor asked, stumbling over her words in the face of George's imposing presence. I'm Charlotte Martin's father. I'm here for my daughter's parents' evening. My dad replied, his tone even but somehow carrying an inexplicable weight. My flight was delayed, so I apologize for being late. What's going on? A confused parent spoke up. After all, the news of Phoebe being the wife of the Martin Group's CEO had caused quite a stir when they got married. It had been the talk of the nation for months, plastered across every newspaper and news channel in the country. Moreover, Dad often appeared in the media. Due to his frequent interviews with major financial magazines, his face was familiar to the public, making it impossible for anyone to impersonate or falsely claim his identity. And then there was Phoebe's startled husband when my dad first entered. Though quiet, it had been clearly audible to everyone in the room. Now, all eyes in the classroom darted between the two. Parents and students alike, all eager to understand what was unfolding before them. Why was the CEO of Martin Group claiming Charlotte as his daughter, while his wife, Phoebe Andrews, insisted that Emma was her only child? The form tutor nervously swallowed before forcing a smile, and announcing that they would proceed with the parents' evening. Unlike the lively atmosphere of parents' evenings in the past, this one was notably tense. Dad and Grandma sat in the front row, arms crossed, brows furrowed as they watched the form tutor speak. The entire event felt more like a job performance review than a school meeting. The usually composed form tutor was visibly nervous, sweating profusely and on the verge of tears as she stood at the front. The mood only lightened when the form tutor began to announce the students' rankings in the recent year group exams. I, having secured the top spot in the year, received high praise from the form tutor. As an exemplary student, I was asked to share my study habits with my classmates and their parents. Dad, as the parent of a top student, was put on the spot. The form tutor asked him to share how he supervised my studies and his approach to my education. After a moment of silence, Dad's expression softened, showing a rare vulnerability as he looked at me apologetically. I'm not a perfect father, he began, due to frequent business trips. I've spent very little time with her since she was old enough to remember. But I'm incredibly proud because my daughter is exceptional. She's grown into an outstanding young woman, even surpassing my own achievements at her age. So today, I want to take this opportunity to apologize to her. I'm sorry for all the hardships she endured when I wasn't there. I'm sorry for not being by her side when she needed me most. Facing my father's apologetic gaze, I couldn't hold back my tears. At that moment, my heart was truly conflicted. I felt admiration and understanding towards my father, but also resentment. I admired his ability to manage a company of over 1,000 people so efficiently. And I understood that his neglect of me, his daughter, was actually for the sake of all the employees in the company and the thousands of families behind them. But that didn't mean I didn't resent him. In my previous life, when I was repeatedly disappointed by the lack of maternal love I so desperately sought, when I envied my classmates whose parents picked them up every day, I would always resent him for not coming back to be with me, for not being by my side when I needed him most. But in the end, all that resentment dissipated the moment he, in my previous life, upon hearing that I had been wronged, boarded that ill-fated early flight back to country and perished. "Dad, I don't blame you," I said, grasping my father's broad hand. Perhaps in every daughter's heart, a father's hand is always broad and warm. With those warm, large hands, he supported me, provided for me, and created a home for me. Many parents in the room were moved by this scene, seemingly forgetting the little incident caused by Phoebe and Emma earlier. After the speech, my father and I were asked to return to our seats, and the form teacher began to announce the rankings of the other students. As the rankings progressed, the teacher's tone became increasingly serious, and the atmosphere in the classroom grew tense once again. Finally, when the teacher called out Emma's name, she couldn't help but slam the report card heavily on the desk. "Ms. Andrews, Emma's mother, correct?" The form teacher looked at Phoebe, her eyes full of disdain and exasperation. Having been a form teacher for many years, she had developed a sense of discernment. She could naturally see that Phoebe's earlier comments were deliberately aimed at me. An adult deliberately targeting a child was enough to provoke her disgust. "Ms. Andrews, Emma's monthly test results are the worst in the entire year. She alone has dragged down our entire class's performance. You should know that this is the top class in the year. Since Emma has been transferred to this class, could you please pay more attention to her academic performance? As parents, you should set a good example. Don't let the child be like you, focusing on trivial matters. If she continues to drag down the class's performance in the upcoming final exams, I will have to report the situation to the headmaster. At that point, she may need to change her learning environment." The form teacher's voice was particularly stern. Phoebe's face, which had been so smug earlier, now looked as embarrassed as it could be. Beside her, Emma's head was almost buried to the ground, not daring to lift it in the face of Phoebe's murderous glare. After all, since she had used connections to transfer to this class, Phoebe had spent a lot of money on tutors and intensive courses to help Emma keep up. But her grades had not improved. Instead, they had gradually deteriorated to this current state. The key difference was that in the previous life, faced with the teacher's criticism, Phoebe could still argue with the teacher stubbornly. But now, with my father and grandmother sitting in the front row, she would be mad to dare to speak up in defense of Emma. Unlike their high-profile behavior in the previous life, this time, the two of them were like mice crossing the street. As soon as the parents' meeting ended, they slunk out of the classroom. I followed my father and grandmother, closely behind the two of them, as we returned home. Now, Phoebe would have to explain to my father where this grown daughter of hers had come from. The vast living room of the manor house was eerily silent at that moment. Dad and Grandma wore grim expressions, neither willing to break the silence. Emma, frightened as a mouse, cowered behind Phoebe, trembling. Seeing the tense atmosphere, Phoebe forced a smile and began to fabricate excuses to her father. "Darling, I know you and Mom are upset with me," she began. "I didn't mean to miss Charlotte's parents' evening. She's the Martin family's princess, with so many people doting on her. Surely she could find someone else to accompany her? As for Emma, she's all alone in this unfamiliar place, without any reliable adults. Since I've been supporting her, I should take responsibility for her too, don't you think? So you decided to slander my Charlotte in front of everyone, claiming she's the daughter of a maid and chauffeur?" Grandma was clearly furious, her walking stick nearly jabbing Charlotte's mother. "Did you think George and I didn't hear what you said outside? Or did you plan to fool us both? If George and I hadn't arrived in time, my dear Charlotte would have been bullied by you two wretches today. I didn't, Realizing that Grandma and Dad had heard everything she'd said earlier, she panicked. She hurriedly tried to explain, but before she could speak, I cut her off. Grandma, in a way, perhaps she wasn't lying. I glanced sideways at Phoebe. Some truths, it seemed, were finally ready to be revealed. Charlotte, what do you mean? Grandma asked, momentarily confused. I lowered my gaze. I mean, one thing she said wasn't a lie. Grandma, Dad, Emma might indeed be my sister in some sense. As I spoke, I pulled a DNA test report from my school bag and placed it before them. Grandma's face contorted with anger as she read the report on the coffee table. When she saw the genetic match confirming a familial relationship, her eyes flashed with fury. Phoebe Andrews! You've got some nerve! Grandma's chest heaved, clearly overcome with rage. She flung the papers at Phoebe's feet, who immediately bent to pick them up. But when Phoebe saw the secret she'd long tried to hide revealed on that paper, she stumbled, losing her balance and falling to the ground. No, this can't be true. She's faked it. This DNA report is fake. It's all lies. Phoebe frantically tore the report to shreds, as if doing so could erase the truth. She glared at me, her eyes filled with murderous intent. You ungrateful brat. After all these years I've spent raising you, this is how you repay me, turning against your own mother. Just because I showed a bit more affection to Emma, you fabricate this so-called evidence to hurt me. What are you playing at? Enough, I said, finding the whole charade increasingly pointless. Even at this stage, Phoebe remained stubbornly in denial. There's no need for this. I know you're not my real mother, I said calmly, stating the fact. Besides, if you search your conscience, you know exactly how you've treated me all these years. In my previous life, they had me committed to a mental hospital where I endured endless torment. When I was on the brink of death from the abuse, Phoebe came to see me one last time. She revealed the truth about everything. And it was then that I learned she wasn't my mother. My birth mother was my father's true love. When she became pregnant with me, due to her delicate condition, they decided to wait until after I was born to have their wedding. But just days before my mother was due to give birth, Phoebe schemed her way into my father's bed. She deliberately arranged for paparazzi to capture photos, which she then anonymously sent to my mother, who was in the hospital awaiting delivery. The shock sent my mother into premature labor, and she died on the operating table after giving birth to me. After my mother's death, my father was devastated. He had intended never to marry again, but he couldn't resist Phoebe's manipulations after their one-night stand left her pregnant. She cunningly leaked the news while my father was arranging my mother's funeral. This incident affected Martin Group's stock prices. To stabilize the company's reputation, my father was forced to marry Phoebe. Of course, the price was that she had to terminate her pregnancy, as I was to be the only heir to the Martin family. Phoebe got her wish of marrying into the Martin family, and used their resources to catapult herself to stardom as a leading actress. I was too young at the time to understand the intricacies of the situation, and my father, not wanting me to be burdened with the sorrow of losing my mother at birth, deliberately concealed the truth. So from my earliest memories, I always believed Phoebe was my birth mother. To secure her position in the Martin family, Phoebe pretended to care for me. But behind the scenes, she never gave up trying to have another child with my father. However, since she married into the Martin family, my father had always been wary of her. No matter what tactics she employed, he never had any intimate contact with her again. Gradually, Phoebe could no longer keep up the charade. Finally, when I was 15, while my father was abroad busy establishing a branch company, she brought home a girl under the guise of sponsoring an underprivileged student. But that child wasn't some disadvantaged student she was sponsoring. She was her real daughter. She was a child born to Phoebe and one of her former boyfriends, before she schemed her way into my father's bed. To keep it a secret, this child had been raised at her mother's house, passed off as her sister's daughter. Emma was 2 years older than me, but to avoid suspicion, Phoebe had managed to forge her identity, altering her age to match mine. This was why Phoebe always favored her, and why in my previous life, after my father and grandmother died, she eagerly transferred Emma to her own name. Emma Andrews was her biological daughter all along. When did you find out? Emma's face was filled with shock and even a hint of terror. But I remained calm. No mother would not love her own daughter. I have a father and grandmother who love me. So I don't believe that my birth mother wouldn't love me as wholeheartedly as they do. With that, I slowly stood up. No longer wasting words with her, and turned to go back to my room. What happens next is not for me to worry about. I very much wanted to avenge my mother who was killed by her. But Phoebe's actions back then were too covert. If I were to accuse her rashly, with my father and grandmother's sharp minds, they would surely be suspicious of me. So, some things are better left for my father to investigate himself. After that, it won't be too late for me to make my move. My father acted swiftly. Instead of a divorce agreement, he sent her directly to a so-called nursing home. After all, he had given her a chance before. If she had agreed to sign the divorce papers and leave with Emma, never to appear here again, he would have let her go. But Phoebe refused. She would rather face the consequences with my father than divorce him. She even contacted my father's old enemies, whom he had wronged in the past, intending to kidnap me. Unfortunately, my father discovered her plan, and sent all those who attempted to harm me away as well. My father asked for my opinion on this matter. After pretending to consider for a moment, I said to him, "Miss Phoebe seems to have lost her mind. Dad, you've been married to her for so many years. Shouldn't the priority be to get her treatment?" My words made my father understand immediately. A divorce would inevitably affect the company. Since Phoebe was so against it, they might as well not divorce. Family scandals should be kept private. By fabricating a story of mental illness, they could send her to a nursing home owned by the Martin family. This way, Martin Group wouldn't suffer any losses. Phoebe was sent to the nursing home to prevent her from escaping and causing more trouble, and to avenge my mother and me. A year after she was confined to the nursing home, I had her transferred to a mental hospital abroad. There, I had her frontal lobe removed, turning her into a living person without any self-awareness, a complete imbecile. She lives on like this, as if she were an idiot, without personality, living in misery. As for Emma, I didn't let her off either. I had her taken abroad as well, making her a caregiver in the nursing home. Unless Phoebe dies, she can never leave the facility. Didn't they have such a close mother-daughter relationship? A daughter should rightfully take care of her mother for life. As for me, after this incident, I went with my father to visit my birth mother's grave. Looking at the tombstone, I saw a woman who looked very similar to me. Her gentle eyes seemed to gaze at me through the photograph. For some reason, I began to cry. I thought, if she were still alive, I wouldn't have gone through all that suffering. I would probably be the happiest child in the world.